Hi and welcome, and thanks for joining me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michelle Mace, and my topic is, can your massage practice come back stronger in 2020? So 2020 has gotten off to an interesting start with all this virus, which has affected everyone's business worldwide. So, there's going to be those that will be closing their doors. Others will survive, but there's going to be those who will come back stronger. Why? Because your dream is still the goal. But sometimes you have to pivot and change the plan, especially if it's not working. But you never change the goal. So during the 2008 recession, I remember because people I knew were sneaking out in the middle of the night because their homes had been foreclosed. We live in a retirement area, so we're rather insulated from when these events and economic woes start hitting. But this time it didn't. And I saw businesses that had been around for 2 decades closing their doors. But Instagram, Airbnb, Groupon, Uber, and Venmo all started during the same recession. And those companies learned to use technology and didn't fight against it. See, massage therapists who use online marketing and aren't afraid of learning via online, they aren't planning on just surviving this. They're planning to come back stronger. Well, that's all high tech and we're hands-on. Okay, so let's look at people who went against the odds. Now, that doesn't mean that they did the same thing as everybody else does, because they didn't. In fact, they embraced innovation and changed and pivoted when they needed to. If something didn't work, they learned from it and did it another way. There's this famous saying from Edison, who invented the light bulb, and he was asked by a reporter, Mr. Edison, how did it feel to fail 1,000 times? And what did he reply to the reporter? Young man, I did not fail 1,000 times. I found 1,000 ways not to do it. See, he didn't give up the goal. He just changed the plan. So what they went up against wasn't technology. It was the tide of opinion that they were up against. They stopped listening to people all around them who told them this couldn't be done or you had to do it this way because that's the way it's always been done. So this is a prime example. In 1934, in the middle of the Great Depression, Walt Disney decides to create Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now, this takes him 4 years and he spent $1.5 million on the production. All the people around, his greatest critics, said this production was going to fail miserably. He was going to go bankrupt and he'd be the laughing stock. Well, in 1937, when it was released, on the tail end of the Depression, things were still bad. To the delight of a nation that was weary of economic struggle, it grossed $6.5 million. Well, yeah, it's easy to point out that he at least had the money to invest. Okay, fair enough. So let's talk about a person who had absolutely nothing going for them and didn't have but a few dollars in her pocket. Because these people are the inspiration. These people succeeded in the worst of times and circumstances. And here's where we find our hope and inspiration to get back to the business at hand. See, I don't know if any of you have seen the Netflix series Self-Made with Octavia Spencer. If you've seen it, go ahead and say yes in the chat. If you haven't, stop everything and go watch it. This story is phenomenal and so inspirational. So I'm going to tell you the short version of her story. It's about Madam C.J. Walker. Now, she's a woman of color born in 1867 to an uneducated slave who has only been emancipated for 2 years from the Deep South. She was the first sibling to be born not into slavery. But that doesn't mean that it was easy for her. There were pitfalls all along the way. And it starts, she's age 7 and she finds herself orphaned. Her mother passes away and now she's alone. So she moves in with one of her older sisters and goes to work in the cotton fields. For the next 7 years, she is a child working in the cotton fields and she's not going to school. And to boot, her brother-in-law was said to be very cruel. So to escape her dismal life, as well as her abusive brother-in-law, she then marries at the ripe old age of 14. I can't even imagine that. So soon after, the US enters into a recession from 1882 to 85. And this is when she becomes pregnant. And 2 years later, after she has a 2-year-old, her husband dies. So now she's 20 years old, a single mom of 2-year-old with no support. She's so far down the ladder of life that the only way out is up. So things were tough. And she still didn't give up seeking a better life. She moves to St. Louis to be near her brothers for family support. And here she gets a job as a laundress and a cook for $1.50 a day, working 14-hour days. And for the next 15 years, she scrimps and saves enough money to send her daughter to college. And in the middle of all that, she also remarries and her marriage fails after 9 years. So this woman knows heartache. And here she is single again. So she joins this church where she meets educated and successful Black men and women who inspire her. And it's also here with this inspiration that she's received that she gets some form of education, although I don't think it's a formal one and it wasn't for very long. She has not lost her vision of a better life, and she will not let go of that dream. But due to all the stress and struggles of her life, this contributes to her hair loss, along with the harsh hair products that they used, which was very common for other women to start losing their hair as well. So hair loss is not easy for men or women. You know, we make jokes about toupees, oh, just shave your head and, you know, accept it. But we would never say that to a woman. I mean, she's 38 and she's losing her hair. You would think she would, you know, give up on her dream. So for all of you late bloomers, she's your poster child. So this leads her to meet another woman that sells hair products for hair growth. And then she becomes a sales agent for her in 1904. So things are looking up. But she decides she can come up with a better formula. And a combination. And with only a few dollars, she starts experimenting by mixing batches of her own products in her kitchen in a wash tub and starts selling them door to door. And she's doing pretty well. But then she hears that her brother has passed away and he has left her sister-in-law with 4 young children. So she moves to Colorado to help out. But she continues to sell door to door and she does very well. So in 1905 till 1914, when World War I begins, the country was now in the midst of yet another, although mild, recession. These are not booming times. So let's back up a little bit. She's a single woman of color with very little money, unmarried, minimal education during a depressed economy, and starts a new business selling hair products to women of color who also didn't have a lot of money. And by the way, they only made up 5% of the population at that time. This doesn't sound like a recipe for success, but in the current circumstances, we can learn a lot from her. So a year later, she does remarry Charles Joseph Walker. And this is where she becomes Madam C.J. Walker. You can see her growing into herself with more confidence and her business is doing well. So it's still the early 1900s and women in general didn't have many opportunities. And only the wealthy few received a college education. But her daughter went to college during this time. And even when women did go to college, most of them still got married to become a wife and mother. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that was their only choice. So now we fast forward to 1911. In just 5 short years, she has built a successful and thriving business. You would think that a woman who had had such obvious limitations would be happy to leave it at that. But she wasn't just about helping herself. She encouraged and trained others to be financially independent. So in 1911, there is literally a picture of her on Wikipedia. You can go look it up. She's sitting in a car that not only did she own, but she drove. She embraced the technology of her time, in a time when few Americans in general even owned cars, let alone women driving them. Now, remember, women didn't get the vote until 1920. So I can't tell you how many times I hear massage therapists tell me, I'm not techie. I wonder what this woman would have had to say. So we can be like her. We can help more people and refuse to be limited to just 4 or 5 deep tissue massages a day. We can use hand-saving techniques like Ashiatsu that would allow us to work a full day. And instead of paying overhead for part-time hours, we can now work full-time hours and up our income to also catch up after this closure. I'm sure that there were people at the time that were telling her that this couldn't be done. But this woman didn't just break the mold for herself. She encouraged others to do the same and became a role model. But she didn't stop there. She now decides she wants to expand her business and she wants to relocate to Indianapolis to build a factory. Well, her marriage at this time was not great, and her husband was in disagreement. He was happy with the way the business was, but she wasn't. And I think about a year later, their marriage ended. So she buys a house with property where she builds her own factory, produces her own products, then opens a hair salon and a beauty school. In a time this should never have happened, but it did. See, she filled a need. There was a gap. Massage therapists not only fill a need, but they're going to be in high demand right now with all the stress going on out there. And other massage therapists are also probably going to be closing their doors. So there's going to be more clients looking for relief. So she went from being a washwoman with a few dollars to building a $1 million business in only a decade. And there were mishaps along the way. I mean, she had failed marriages. I mean, it could not have been easy to conduct business as a woman, let alone a woman of color. So if something didn't go right, she learned, she changed the plan, and she moved forward. She never lost sight of the goal. And these times, you don't need to lose sight of the goal either, but you may have to change the plan. Her accomplishments aren't as impressive to me as the obstacles that she had to overcome to achieve what she did under the circumstances, the conditions, and the times. It's amazing. A poor, barely educated woman, a woman of color in bad economic times who succeeded in building her dream business through a recession, a world war, and the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. We don't nearly have the limitations that she had, but you don't, if you want to, but you want to be like her. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I do. I want to encourage therapists to be different, to change how they do massage and use barefoot techniques like Ashiatsu that will free their hands and allow them to grow. Our hands are limited and they can only do so much, but we aren't limited. We can use our feet. I know massage therapists who, before this virus, were making $100K a year. And they obviously have taken a hit recently, like everybody else, but they didn't do it the traditional way. So you can keep plugging away, doing it like everybody else until you hit that wall. You're tired, you're older, your hands are worn out, or you can do it differently by utilizing your feet. So you don't have to be Black or a woman to appreciate this woman's achievements. You just have to think the way that she did. As massage therapists, we're way ahead of this woman. We have the internet where we can learn everything you need to know. You don't even have to leave your home or take off work to learn these techniques. It's all online. So Madam C.J. Walker, Walt Disney, and all the others face the same challenges that we are facing, probably even more. They all had to overcome the hurdles of their feelings, fears, and doubts because they were real, but they didn't let those feelings dictate their actions. And they did not give in to the prevailing attitudes of their time. But let us be reminded, courage doesn't exist without fear. So get ready to be courageous. We may even have some tough times ahead, but if we want to succeed and come back stronger, then we need to be inspired by them and think more like them. We can't be afraid to use the technology we have to market and take advantage of online classes. During Madam C.J. Walker's lifetime, she promoted the financial independence of women of color. That was bold. Her company trained 20,000 women and set them on the road to success. She was the wealthiest self-made Black woman in America at the time. She was the Oprah Winfrey of her era. It's just an amazing story. So if you haven't seen it, go see it. If you want to be different, optimistic, and learn more about hand-saving techniques, then I would absolutely love it if you would join my Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Michelle Mace. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the Facebook group.